Hi everyone, it's Simon Keeling here, and it's Thursday the 22nd of December. Only a couple more days to go now, and things seem to be running rapidly towards Christmas, don't they? This is the shot from Rovaniemi this morning in northern Finland, in Lapland. I actually went here, and the temperature did virtually the same on me. It's -1 there at the moment. Nowhere near what you would expect it to be at this time of year, which is sort of -10s to -15s. So way warmer conditions than normal through Lapland, which of course is partly where Father Christmas shares his home. And there he is, of course, and I'm quite pleased really that he's got his green gloves on, because it looks like being a green Christmas across much of Western Europe this time around. Here's how he's going to see temperatures on Sunday morning. North Pole up here, look, we've got -30s up there, but some -40s just drifting into Siberia. It's really through the central and eastern parts of Russia where the coldest of conditions are. You can see here over Western Europe, it is really relatively mild for this time of year, but some cold air drifting now into Canada and across the eastern parts of the States too, look, into Christmas Day. So he's going to have a very cold spell, I think, for his flight across Siberia, across the North Pole and down into North America, but through the British Isles and Europe doesn't look to be too cold at all. This is Christmas morning. Those of you wondering about a white Christmas, this is from Ryan Maui's site, and it shows the snow falling on during Christmas Day afternoon, and you can see how little snowfall there is here across western parts of Europe. Look, really you do have to go into Scandinavia, right the way across into Russia before you pick anything up. Yes, bits and pieces across Eastern Europe, but not as much as you would normally see. But some good snowfall, look, just coming through across the Alpine regions there. But very, very little snowfall across the western parts of Europe on Christmas Day. Okay, how does the forecast shape up? Well, this is the 7 to 10 day means. What I should say, of course, briefly, is that this site is kept free of charge by the adverts that you see around. So if you see an advert that you like, click on it, go through to it. That generates revenue for us, which keeps the site free of charge, and it shows the advertisers that you're interested in what we're doing. So thank you for doing that, for those of you who already have. This then is the 7 to 10 day means from the ECMWF on the left here and the GFS on the right. This runs from next Wednesday through to New Year's Day, so through to a week on Sunday. And we've got some subtle differences developing between these two here. A couple of points that I want to just show you. Above normal heights, look down towards the south and across the eastern states on the ECMWF. And yes, that's an agreement look across the GFS, but not notice the increased heights going into the eastern states. GFS making far more of this trough. Also notice the cold block of air here at 500 millibars coming into the western states. It's on both the ECMWF and on the GFS, and this is all to do with some warming that's gone on in the stratosphere. I mentioned in the blog about Joe Bastardi and my friend Joe DeLeo over in the States talking about the stratospheric warming that's been taking place over the last few days. It takes a while to get through into the system, but here it is, starting to feed into the northern parts of the states. Now Joe and Joe have both been stressing that this is going to be a slow old process, and so cold air, it will take sort of 2 or 3 weeks to get across the northern portions of Canada and into the northern parts of the states, but they're predicting some winter weather there. Now I think the models just aren't handling that particularly very well, and it is bringing a question mark into the models, particularly into the middle to the end of next week, and how the weather across Europe develops in the following week. I'll show you more of that in just a mo. Oh, sorry, let's just go back to that one just briefly. Yeah, and the jet stream looks still coming across the Atlantic. The lines here close together showing us that the jet stream, if we follow it back here, is originating somewhere around the Great Lakes. So cool conditions, but getting warmer, of course, as they come across the Atlantic. And similar on the GFS, look, the source region basically the same in the Great Lakes in the States. So some pretty cold air coming across the Atlantic, the warmer Atlantic, able to generate areas of low pressure into the jet stream and bring those across to the British Isles. Now this again is from Ryan Maui's site. This is the prediction for the NAO over the next couple of weeks, and notice how we've gone into this sharp positive territory here, look, going through Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, and mild conditions here in the British Isles. But then look at the dip here as we get through into the back end of next week. This is where we go cooler as high pressure builds in across the British Isles, and it's during this period where we could find frosts I don't think anything cold. We're not talking a big freeze here. We're just talking cooler conditions. And then notice how into the new year it does start to build the NAO back up again. So we get back into the westerlies, and that brings the milder conditions back. That's according, of course, to the GFS model. But there is an alternative version of that model, and this is the Canadian Ensemble. I just want to take you to the 1st of January just to show you what this model is doing. As I say, this is from the Canadian Ensemble model from midnight last night, and what I want you to notice, this is valid for midday on New Year's Day. High pressure across Eastern Europe here, look. Low pressure out towards the west, and we're still under the influence of this relatively mild south to southeasterly wind and high pressure here. But if I knock it on to the end of the sequence, so this is the 7th of January, notice the high is shifting its way northwards. The winds have become more southeasterly, so that's cooler conditions coming in. I'm stressing again, not cold, but this could be the start of something colder coming in for this middle to latter part of January. And this would tie in with this stratospheric warming event taking place in the States, which will fundamentally change the atmosphere because it's covering such a large area and have a knock-on effect to Europe. Now that doesn't mean that we're going to get freezing cold, but it means there is the potential there for a change on the way. So it's this period from about the 31st of December through to about the 7th of January that we've got to watch for these changes taking place. That could lead us into a colder second half of January. But back to the present time, and this is the GFS model again for the next few days. We've got the time here, top left hand corner. Look, this chart was for 3 o'clock in the early hours of this morning. As I run the sequence through, you'll notice that high pressure stays with us through today and right the way through most of tomorrow too. But here comes a cold front, look, slipping southeastwards tomorrow afternoon excuse me, and that takes some rain southeast through the country, clearing away by tomorrow evening and introducing temporarily cooler but much brighter conditions across northern and western areas. I think a cracking day tomorrow across much of northern and eastern parts of Britain. Those of you who like to fly, tomorrow is a brilliant day. Eastern Scotland, northeast England, in fact northwest England, eastern parts of Wales once cloud clears in the morning, Northern Ireland too. Look to be a cracking day for flying tomorrow. Great visibility behind that front. And then overnight into Saturday, so we find fronts then start to move in, look, across Scotland. That's going to bring a damp and cloudy Christmas Eve through much of northern and western Scotland, as well as western parts of Northern Ireland. But eastern and southern Ireland, eastern Scotland, eastern England, the Midlands, most of Wales should get away with a breezy, bright and very mild Christmas Eve. Christmas Day then brings that southwest wind again. Still got outbreaks of rain affecting western areas, got most of it across western Scotland. Those of you watching yesterday will know that I spoke about this heavy risk of rain across western and northern Scotland through the weekend into the early part of next week. That looks to be on the cards. Elsewhere, breezy, generally quite dry, but I do think western coasts and hills always clogged up by low cloud through Christmas Day. And then into Boxing Day, western coasts and hills again clogged up by cloud, more persistent rain for western parts of Scotland, but the east of Scotland, eastern England, the Midlands, southern England under the area of high pressure, so staying mild, and generally it looks as if it will be quite dry. Now to Tuesday, look, notice what happens here. Front slips its way southwards, gets stuck through northern England, through Ireland, pressure stays high, and we find a trough split in the Atlantic. Remember me talking about this trough split earlier in the week? Well, there it is out in the Atlantic. That means that it leaves us with a front through the central parts of the country as pressure builds across the central parts of the UK through Wednesday. This could be a frosty, quite a foggy period for some of us, cloudy and cool for others. And it looks like that hangs around into Thursday. But by the end of the week, the GFS excuse me, is trying to bring in more unsettled conditions, look, with fronts passing eastwards and a return to this southwesterly flow. But do bear in mind what the Canadian model was doing at the same time. Here it is, remember, high pressure building in, yes, towards the south and holding on. Still that mild south to southeasterly flow, but eventually the Canadian bringing that high back northwards and the flow turning more southeasterly. So we need to watch this period through the new year very carefully indeed. At the moment, I'd be plumbing for probably a fairly mild start to January, but then a gradual dip down in temperatures as the month progresses, although I'm not seeing anything desperately desperately cold at the moment. For that, you'd need this high to be further north, and you can see how low pressure is trying to hold on in the far north of the continent. So, hope that's been useful for you. Don't forget to click on an advert if you see one that you like. Go through to the sponsor. It generates revenue for us and shows the sponsor that the site is popular. And do keep the sun shining. Thanks for watching, and I'll update you again tomorrow.